We're protecting the liver. We're protecting your blood sugars, your insulin resistance. We're making you more insulin sensitive by adding more. Hi friends, how often do you eat dessert? Most people say not that often, just once in a while. But what's once in a while? Is it once a week? Maybe once a day? Or maybe a few bites here and there? And then when you actually eat it, it's because you know you deserve it. But here's the part most people never think about. What if your body reacts long after you've eaten the dessert? So hear me out. Let's say if you're allergic or you're sensitive to something, you may not know it immediately. The immune response doesn't always turn off when you swallow the last bite, and nor does it turn on with that last bite. For some people, the signal can linger. Your gut can be a little irritated. Your skin can have flares. You have aches in your joints. And basically, your body can stay inflamed in between servings. So the point is, when we think about dessert and how it affects our body, do we ever think about maybe it's sending the wrong signal way beyond the digestion of the dessert? My name is Dr. Lou, and I've been a double board certified physician for 25 plus years. And boy, do I see a lot of inflammation from the tip of people's heads to the bottom of people's feet. Actually, all doctors who treat real diseases see a ton of inflammation because there is no disease that doesn't start with inflammation. But the goal is not to squash all inflammation because you need it to survive. Like everything in life, there needs to be a balance. Too much, and you can get pretty sick. Too little, and you can get pretty sick. Let's say you twist an ankle. That's swelling and pain. That's inflammation. But when you eat a piece of cake, you may not get pain and swelling. You may not see all that inflammation, but you may feel it. And most people don't realize that. A lot of inflammation is silent. And I've come to realize that most of us are so inflamed because we're eating chemicals that are put together as pretend food instead of eating whole food. And the biggest reasons why we aren't eating whole foods is because people don't know how to put it together. They've actually lost the art of cooking with real food. We've been baking cakes from a box prepared in a factory with artificial ingredients and artificial flavors. We're so focused on non-artificial, but that's not actually the worst part about the cake. The worst part about the cake is that we think it's okay to eat cake that's full of natural flour and sugar. But the thing is, there's nothing natural about refined flour or sugar. And unfortunately, you're going to find thousands of recipes of all different kinds of cakes. This is a carrot cake made from highly processed refined flours and sugars, which this is not made from. And the worst part about eating cake, or even being around cake, is that everybody accepts it as normal food. Look, folks, there's nothing normal about eating refined processed flours and sugars. If it was so normal, then why are we changing our body habitus after eating it? So today I'm going to talk to you about 10 whole foods that naturally lower inflammation. And I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm actually going to show you how to put it together so that you can enjoy dessert designed to lower inflammation. And the neat thing about cooking is, if you don't like an ingredient, this is a carrot cake. If you don't like carrots, substitute it with another ingredient that you actually like. You just need to understand a little bit of cooking chemistry to make that magic happen. And by the way, if you find values in my videos, would you mind checking if you're subscribed? And if you are not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, like button, and share button, because it does change how many people get to watch my videos. I appreciate your partnership in helping to change the world. So if you cut this into 16 squares, each square is about 155 to 170 calories. It has about 4 to 5 grams of protein, 21 to 23 grams of carbs, about 3 to 5 grams of fiber, and 6 to 8 grams of fat, and the sugar is about 7 to 8 grams. That's actually pretty good. Now, when you buy a real cake, you know that they have added sugars up to 60 grams per slice. And of course, your cake will be fluffier than my cake because there's just no way you can get that airy texture without putting emulsifiers and ultra refined flour. ultra refined flour is essentially starch, right? You're baking with starch. And what I'm trying to do is bake with whole foods. So the difference between my carrot cake is that I'm only using whole food ingredients. In this cake, I use a unsweetened milk. I prefer soy milk. Now the milk adds more flavor and depth and protein. And I use it instead of like cream or sweetened milk because it gives that liquid that I need to dilute it, to make that batter more blendable without adding extra sugar and not much extra calories. And if you use soy milk, you're going to get more complete proteins. Now you can use almond or oat milk, but the protein would be significantly lower. And the recipe works with that as well. But remember, for blood sugar and fatty liver, the word unsweetened matters because so many foods these days have so much sugar, and that includes these plant milks that you're drinking. Dairy has a lot of sugar. I mean, it's naturally sweet with sugars, right? And some of the sugars you can't metabolize. That's why people get GI symptoms from milk intolerance. But when you drink a plant milk, the milk itself is processed. And a lot of times they're adding other stuff that you may not want to eat. I'm going to use a cup of dates, and I use this mason jar to mix all my wet ingredients because number one, it's made out of glass, and I try to minimize the plastic utensils or the plastic appliances so I don't get more microplastics. A cup of dates is usually about 8 medjool dates. I'll wash it, I'll unpit it, I'll open it up to make sure that there's no mold inside. Anything that's black or grainy, that's mold, throw that away, okay? So we're gonna put wet ingredients in this mason jar. Dates, you wanna use about a cup. If you have a sweeter tooth, you can use a little bit more. Just know that when you add more dates, you just add more calories. Now, I always use dates in place of white sugar. White sugar is not a food, folks. It's a chemical, right? It has no fiber. It's easy to overeat white sugar because it gives you a fast reward, a dopamine. You think about that sugar, you're already salivating. So when I eat my whole food cake, it's good, but it's not addictive good, right? Because no food should be addictive, right? We shouldn't be controlled by thinking about food all the time. But when we put food together, we should enjoy it. And we should get some fiber, potassium, minerals, and polyphenols. And that's why dates are such a better sweetener than these processed sweeteners, right? Like whether you're using agave or sugar. It's a whole food dessert. And for blood sugar, it's key that you want to eat it packaged. So when you eat dates plus oats, beans, nuts, and flax and carrots, that combination is packaging the dates so it slows down absorption. But just so that you know, dates do not have a high glycemic index, unlike white refined sugar. And when it comes to fatty liver, the faster you absorb the sugar, the more fat you get in your liver. So you just need to soften the dates, wash the dates, you soak them in water, it'll soften, you blend them up, and it'll be like a puree. You can add that to your desserts. Just know that it does add water to your dessert, so you want to use it as a part of your wet recipes and not your dry recipes. We can make the frosting out of cashews and dates that I soaked ahead of time. So I basically soaked it. I poured the water out to flavor some oatmeal that I cooked for my son. But that's the cashews and dates for frosting. We're going to set this aside. And now, let me get my main ingredients. I think I need more room. All right. Okay. So this is what I use to make the cake, okay? So let me show you. The cake is made out of flaxseed. We're gonna have to soak this first. A tablespoon of flax seeds goes with 3 tablespoons of water, okay? And we're gonna soak that in a sec. When you add flax seeds, not only does it bind your cake, but it adds polyphenols. It adds lignans. It adds soluble and insoluble fiber, and it adds omega-3 fats. These are essential fats that you can't get from just, eating your butter. Your cake will hold so much better when you have a binder. That's the power of flax seeds. And it improves your nutrition profile. So it's not just there like an emulsifier to do the work of chemistry, but not help your metabolism. Fiber, remember, slows down the digestion speed of food, soluble fiber. And flax seeds have a ton of soluble fiber, right? We're going to improve our cholesterol. We're going to lower our blood sugars. We're going to reduce the caloric intake because the fiber will bind to some of the calories. And flax seeds are known to be good for your heart, good for your blood pressure, good to help prevent cancer. It's just one of those superfoods. You can buy flaxseed meal. You can grind it yourself so it's fresher. I usually keep all these things in the refrigerator to keep it fresher for longer. And all these things together are so powerful as anti-inflammatory nutrients as a daily dietary pattern. Remember I told you this cake is made out of carrots? These are my grated carrots. Now, some people don't like carrots so gritty, and they want carrots that are smaller. It's up to you. I actually pulverize the carrots just so that my family sometimes doesn't like the individual pieces of carrots, so I make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I grated this. This is about 2 cups of carrots that I grated. I actually didn't peel it. I just washed the peel well. I cut off the head because sometimes there's a lot of dirt trapped on that, and I rubbed it really well to get as much dirt as I can. Carrots is a star of the cake, right? It's a carrot cake. So instead of adding artificial color or adding more sugar, you use carrots that bring the natural sweetness, the moisture, the fiber, and the carotenoids that are so needed for your immune system. The color of the cake comes from the plants, right? None of this is artificial. But the carrots in this recipe help to increase volume and moisture, keeping the cake whole food based. And of course, when we're worried about fatty liver or weight gain, this matters because vegetables add bulk. They're low in calories. They help the stomach feel full, like you ate something real. And for heart disease, when you eat carrots, you're adding a ton of potassium and fiber into this dessert that then elevates this into an anti-inflammatory food. Okay, with these carrots, I'll add some raisins. I bought this at Costco, organic raisins, probably like 1/4 cup. Depends on how sweet you want it, okay? So that's another way to sweeten your cake without adding sugar. So you have carrots that are sweet, along with fiber and a lot of healthy nutrients like vitamin A and beta carotene. You have raisins. So those things are actually sweet without the sugar. I have here, I think it's called mandarin quat. It's like a mandarin orange and a kumquat all together in one. So the outside, the skin is really sweet, but the inside is sour like most kumquats. And we're going to use exactly one of these in our wet ingredients. And I'm just going to put in here to show you. I'm going to take the stem off. But I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to use one entire mandarin quat to make the cake. You know, instead of adding artificial citrus fiber or fake stuff, when you use a whole kumquat, that peel gives an intense citrus aroma, right? Instead of just shaving the outside, do the whole thing because the juice adds a nice acidity to balance out the sweetness. So that tiny fruit can make the cake taste so much fresher. And for fighting inflammation, citrus fruits contain vitamin C and other plant compounds like hesperidine. So when you add a kumquat and you add that fragrance and make it pop, you can add less sugar and less frosting because the cake tastes alive without smothering it with, cream and sugar. And when you eat that flavor, like on your tongue, sometimes my tongue is still tingling, and I don't need as much sweetener because it's busy tasting other things. Okay, walnuts, about 1/4 cup. You want to chop this along as well. That will be added to your carrots, okay, as a fold in later. So these 3 ingredients are fold in. Well, walnuts have alpha-linolenic acid, which is an omega-3 fat in plants that needs to be converted into your body into usable omega-3s. But, nuts are super important to eat every day. If you overeat ground nuts like butters, you will gain more weight because you're eating calorically dense food. But this is a great way to replace straight oils and butters and to make your frostings, as well as to use a little bit of softness in your cake and keep that fiber intact, right? This is why it's so anti-inflammatory, because when you eat whole foods, you still get the polyphenols and the fiber that interacts with your body, your gut microbiome. And this is so important for your blood sugar, to prevent fatty liver, to slow down digestion. Now, of course, you don't want to overeat it, right? But you can replace it for protein. So if you eat this on top of your other foods, then you'll just get more calories. But if you eat it to replace other foods, you're actually going to do yourself a favor, right? And this is replacing saturated fat foods such as, animal products and deli meats, that kind of stuff, right? This is great replacement for protein. Base of the carrot cake is not made from your typical wheat flour. It's a flour that I made from oats. So I use high protein oats. Where did I put that? Hold on one sec. Let me get it. So these are the oats that I use. By the way, no company has sponsored my videos. All of these videos I've done myself. I've bought all these ingredients on my own and spend my own time. These are the products I use. You can use these, you can use whatever you want, but I use these because I find that their ingredients seem to best serve my family. Okay, so these are just basically whole grain oats. Generally oats, they're a type of rolled oats, and rolled oats are generally cooked already. But I usually rinse them before I'll eat it, except for when I'm baking like cake. Because when you bake cake, it's hard to rinse it because then you can't adjust the water, can't control the water as well. So that's when I don't rinse it. But generally rolled oats are already cooked. A third of a cup has 9 grams of protein. And that's why I buy these oats for my family so that they don't eat a lot of food. And so, I try to pack as much nutrients as I can because they don't eat a lot of food, okay? And this will be the base. And what I do is I grind this flour, or I grind it into a flour. Okay, so it comes out like this, like rolled oats, all right? But what I do is I pour this into grinder that I have right here, and I'm gonna pour it in, but you have to use the right blade. You have to use a flat blade. If you use this blade, it'll be very hard to grind your oats and you'll find big chunks. You still will have some big chunks when you grind it at home with the flat blade, but it's so much better. When you put it through this grinder, what happens is you get this. You get a pile of what looks like coarse flour, okay? But it's basically oats ground up. And if you look close up, you'll see like parts and pieces of whole oats because it's not perfect. It's like, I'm manually doing this, right? Several times. I think I did it like 3 times to get this amount of flour. Okay, so two cups, with these 2 cups of oat flour, I'm going to put almond meal. And what almond meal is just basically almonds ground up, okay? So I'm going to put a cup of almonds because it'll soften the texture of the oats. The oats are kind of sticky. They gelatinize more. If you've ever cooked oats, it's kind of a sticky substance, right? So if you don't have something drier to mix along with this sticky stuff, then you basically kind of get almost like a softer mochi, okay? That's the texture. So 1 cup of almond flour is going to be mixed with your 2 cups of oats. And this is not refined. It's full of richness that's ground into nuts. So we're going to bring some healthy fats to soften the cake, add some minerals, fiber, and protein. Now, this is super important for several reasons. The reason why I use almond meal as opposed to blanched almond flour, because I want that skin. That skin is where the fiber power is where the polyphenols are, is where you will burn visceral fat. So don't lose that skin and don't buy blanched almonds because you're going to be missing that skin. And when you miss that skin, you turn a pretty healthy whole food into a partially processed food. And that's the thing, like it's kind of like turning wheat into wheat flour. When you don't use whole wheat as a flour, you've stripped it of its fiber. And that's what you're really doing when you're taking away the almond skin. Now, of course, there's fiber in the rest of the almonds, but the skin has powerful polyphenols that's not in the rest of the almonds. So when you put almond flour, you're actually softening up the oats. You're mixing it. You're going to mix it together before you actually bake it. The almond flour gives you like this richness without putting direct fat. So this is a no added fat recipe, but there's natural fats in here. To leaven the cake, what I'll do is we're going to use some baking soda and baking powder. Now, if you have sodium issues, don't use these products because they do add salt, okay? But for people who don't have sodium issues and you want to eat a fluffier product, I think it's okay to use, all right? So I use a aluminum-free baking powder, and I use pure baking soda, just a little bit. Like this is like half a teaspoon. This is like a quarter of a teaspoon. You don't use very much. You choose much, it's just not going to taste good. Okay, and you would mix that to your dry ingredients, which we'll do in a sec. And to the wet ingredients, I'll add half a cup of pineapples. And let me show you how I got this pineapple. So I love pineapple. We eat pineapple just about every day during pineapple season here. And I used to cut it on the side. If you've ever cut a pineapple, you know what I mean. You just cut the skin off. Then you get access to the meat inside, and then you're cutting the flesh. And then that's like, you know, what everybody wants to eat, right? However, I realized, I was watching my husband once, he was cutting a pineapple to make tomato pineapple soup, and he sliced it basically in half. And I thought, oh, that's a very interesting way to cut a pineapple. I've never seen it cut like that. So he left it on the countertop because he only used half of it. And then I cored it to like eat it myself, right? I started from the inside because I didn't want to make a mess. And then I realized, you know, when you cut it in half, you actually end up using more of the meat because then you can scrape it off from the skin. So now this is how I cut my pineapple. And when I scrape it off, I get little like crushed pineapple with the juice to add it into what I'm baking or whatever I'm making. And it turns out to be a great way to cook. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to add half a cup of pineapple to the wet ingredients, and then we're going to blend this all together. Now the crushed pineapple, that's just amazing. We're not adding more sugar or syrup or oil, but it'll keep the cake moist. And pineapple brings a natural sweetness as well as acidity and moisture. So the cake tastes brighter without needing a heavy glaze, and it has that pop of fragrance. Now, of course, pineapple adds more sugar because the pineapple is sweet. But because it has fiber, we're not getting pure sugar, right? We're protecting the liver. We're protecting your blood sugars, your insulin resistance. We're making you more insulin sensitive by adding more whole fruits. And this is not adding fruit juice. I'm not adding pineapple juice. I'm adding whole pineapple that has been shaved off. I did a lot of work to do that. It adds structure and fiber, not just juice. And when it comes to metabolic health, we want to keep that structure and fiber. And we don't want to just substitute blindly from sugar to another sugary, like sugar water, soda, right? All those things actually make us more insulin resistant. So when you add the crushed pineapple, you're helping the cake get moist and sweet, but you're not turning it into a pure sugar bomb. And this is my blender. I'm going to put that here. To this wet ingredients, believe it or not, which if you have followed my videos, you know that I'm a big fan of beans. So this is half a cup of white cannellini beans. And I'm adding beans for texture, for moisture, for fiber and protein, as well as micronutrients like magnesium, okay? So whenever I can, I'm always adding beans. And this is like one of the best. I don't think I brought a spoon over, but it's okay. I'll make it. All right. This is one of the best ingredients to use to add moisture to your baking items. Because if you just bake with oats and almond meal, it's going to be really dry, right? Unless you pour a lot of water, then it's going to be too wet. But if you use something that'll hold water, like beans, then you'll get the perfect soft texture that's moist. If you use white beans, you can't really taste it. Nobody's going to taste it. Your kids are not going to know that there's beans in here, right? Literally, I have dates, pineapple, the kumquat, that the sugar and the other flavors, that's going to mask any of the bean taste. And you want it with the skin. You don't want to separate any of them. Right now, so far, it seems like there's a lot of ingredients, okay? And there's really very little preparation, even for the beans. I literally opened a can of beans, low salt, rinsed it really well to try to get rid of as much of the microplastics as I can get rid of. And that's what I'm using to make my cake. And that's how oftentimes how I use beans, because I'm always in a hurry and don't have time to cook it myself. I'm not, nobody's going to cook half a cup of raw beans, right? It's just too small of a serving, and I haven't had time to do that. Now, white beans, half a cup of cooked white beans and rinse. I use that instead of oil. I use that for moisture and creaminess. And it's one of the most important swaps in whole cakes. Oils can make the cake soft, but oil has no fiber. It's extremely calorically dense. So a traditional cake can deliver a lot of calories very quickly because you're just eating highly refined chemical ingredients as opposed to eating whole foods. And white beans, they do the opposite. They add moisture, they also add fiber, and they add protein, and they help to lower blood sugars. They are so valuable because they slow down digestion and they increase fullness. They also help reduce fatty liver and weight gain because they make the cake more filling, so you actually eat less food, but you have less calories compared to oils and pure sugar. And for heart disease, beans are high fiber foods that reduces cholesterol. It reduces inflammation because it feeds your gut microbiome. And the gut microbiome is a huge, huge regulator of inflammation in your body. And this is why beans, they're not just a substitute, but they are an upgrade to any meal, any food, anytime. Okay, to this, you also need a whisk. You need a tablespoon and a teaspoon measure and a cup measure, okay? And a bowl to mix things. All right. And then the most important part of this anti-inflammatory cake are spices. These are super anti-inflammatory. They've been shown to reduce inflammatory markers. Actually, they have anti-bacterial effects as well. These are just like such good ingredients to always add in everything that you eat. I add it for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. Maybe not these 5 ingredients, but I will add as many spices as I can throughout the day for my breakfast, lunch, and dinner if I actually eat 3 meals a day, okay? Now, if you like the taste of vanilla, I'm using an alcohol-free vanilla, okay? You can cook your own vanilla beans. I didn't have time to do that. So I personally don't add vanilla when I'm baking for me. I don't actually need that, but other people like it. So that's why I'm adding it. It does give a fragrance to it. All right, and then I'm going to take the vinegar out. You only need the vinegar if you're going to use baking soda or baking powder. If you don't use a baking soda or baking powder, you don't need the vinegar because they're basically doing a chemistry experiment. Have you ever mixed vinegar with baking soda? Remember what happens? You make a volcano. And so that's the whole point of making it rise more so that you don't have to use so much of the baking soda and baking powder.
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
And let's get to our very first ingredient, okay? So before we even start, it's really important that you just get your flaxseed soaked. You want to soak this for like 5 to 10 minutes. So to this little, to a container, just put 1 tablespoon. This is a teaspoon scoop. 3 teaspoons is a tablespoon, right? You want to use ground flaxseed. You can grind it yourself. I buy flaxseed meal, so I don't have to grind it. Okay, and then you're going to add 3 tablespoons, by the way, of water. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and the reason you want to do this is not just because it has good omega-3 fats, right? And it has good lignans to reduce cancer rates, to lower blood pressure. It has soluble fiber to help you go to the bathroom and to lower the glycemic index of your food, as well as cholesterol. But the reason why you want to use this is because this is a binder. So generally for cakes to stick together, like this thing will not stick together if you just put oats and beans and almond, okay? This will totally fall apart. And the only reason why it's sticking together is because I have a binder, right? Normally when you bake a cake, the binder is eggs. Personally, I don't eat eggs because I have an allergy to eating eggs. And so I always look for egg substitutes, and flax seeds are the perfect egg substitute for baking, okay? And so you want to let this sit for 5 to 10 minutes to let it kind of expand, and you'll see like it'll swell up. And then what you'll do is after it does that, you're going to pour it in here. Okay. So to this mixture, and afterwards we'll put it all together. Okay. So while that is cooking, okay, because we want, and remember, you want to separate, whenever you're baking, you want to always separate your wet and dry ingredients. This way, things emulsify well. Otherwise, it won't emulsify well. Okay. So to this wet ingredient, add a teaspoon of vinegar. You can add it at any time. Okay. And it's just, you want to add it to the wet so that the vinegar disperses well and it's not just all trapped in one area. You're adding such little vinegar that nobody will taste it. The vinegar that I'm adding is rice vinegar. You can add apple cider vinegar. You're adding so little that it really doesn't matter. It's not very pungent when it's so little. Okay. Let's actually grate this a little bit more, or churn this a little bit more. I forgot my, my blade. So hold on one sec. Let me get that. All right, so I'm going to add 2 cups of carrots, right? I already measured this. 2 cups of grated carrots to this machine so it doesn't have to overwork. I'm going to just pour it all in. I'm going to grate this up so that it is smaller pieces. Now, like I said, you don't have to do this part. I just do it because my people like a softer texture, right? Okay, so this is what it looks like, right? It's just smaller texture. It's up to you how you want your carrots the texture of your carrots, right? That's a neat thing about cooking. You can cut as big chunks or as small chunks as you want. Now, the other thing I'm going to put in here is I'm going to chop up walnuts because, again, it's a texture problem. My kids have a texture issue. They don't like chunky food. This is a cup measure, and, you know, it's okay if you put more. Right? This is baking. You don't have to be exact. People say you have to be exact in baking. I disagree with that. If you understand the chemistry of how things put together, you can eyeball it. I eyeball all my ingredients. All right. So right here is my walnuts, right? I'm going to set this aside. This is what I'm going to fold in, okay? Let me set that aside. Okay. The next thing that I was going to fold in is raisins, about a 1/4 cup. All right. We're going to put it all in this bowl so that we don't forget any ingredients, okay? So the thing with raisins is, you know, like I say, you don't have to be exact, but you do have to loosen them because sometimes it gets stuck together, especially if they're a little old because of the sugar. So you want to make sure they're loose and so that you're not getting clumps. I guess if you like clumps, you can eat clumps, but this way, you know, it's evenly dispersed throughout your batter, right? Okay. So that's a tip with raisins. Now, if you soak your raisins before you cook them, that could work even better. It could be a lot softer. That can leak a little bit of moisture in your cake so that around your cake, it's going to be wetter areas that will be a little bit more difficult to cook. So I tend not to soak it because the batter is already wet and then the raisins can absorb the liquid if I put too much liquid, okay? And like I said, I don't bake based on recipes. I bake based on eyeballing things. And I've just learned over time what to do, what not to do, because I've been baking my whole life. And I used to make all those highly refined sugary cakes. I quit doing that. If you want vanilla, I forgot about that. You can put in a tablespoon of vanilla. Let that sit there to get as much vanilla out as possible. This will bring a nice fragrance to your cake. Okay, so to this mixing bowl, you'll put in 2 cups of this oat flour that you just made, okay? Now, like I said, I know I'm not doing it the way, usually you take a knife and you make sure that it's exactly the same. You know, I don't like to use a lot of equipment, so I'm not going to do that, right? But I have the recipe up for you. And if you follow it and you follow it to the T, it may still be a little wetter or drier depending on how you ground your oats. So you can adjust it depending on the texture. So it's important to be able to adjust it, right? And the more you bake, you'll understand how to adjust it. Okay, so that's 2 cups of oat flour. To this, I'm going to add 1 cup of almond meal. Okay. Now, I generally don't want to stick things in the bag to contaminate the bag. So I'll pour it out. And if I miss, it's okay. It's just, it's just food that you're going to eat. So generally, I'm not exact in baking. I don't do anything when I cook exactly because it just takes too much time. All right. So that's 1 cup of almond meal. Okay. And the almonds give the mixture moisture. That's the whole point of the almond. All right. So now to this ingredient, I'm going to add some baking soda and baking powder. Now, the thing is, I don't have a utensil to use it with, so I have to get a spoon because this, I want to make more exact, kind of. I don't want to overdo it. And if I just pour it in, I will overdo it. So hold on one sec. All right, I'm back. So to this mixture, I'm going to put so this is about a 1/4 teaspoon. I'm going to put 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. I make sure it's aluminum free because we shouldn't be eating aluminum. That's not a necessary nutrient at all. In fact, it could be toxic and it's associated with Alzheimer's or dementia. And then I'm going to put a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Okay. If you put too much baking soda, it'll have that baking soda taste. And don't forget, baking soda is sodium, so that when you use this, you're adding sodium to your food, even though you don't taste it, okay? So just keep that in mind. All right. So then what I'm going to do is you can mix this now, or you can mix it after you put your spices. So I'm going to put my spices. So to this mixture, I'm going to put like 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, okay? Now the ginger, I've noticed clumps, so that you want to make sure you get rid of the clumps before you put it in. And almond meal also clumps if it's older. So if you've opened it, I think the moisture makes it clump, okay? So I'm very liberal with my spices. So if I end up putting more, it's okay with me because the more spices, the better, especially ginger. Ginger is such a good spice to help your gut relax. It's really great for just calming your parasympathetic nervous system so that you don't have nausea. I take it all the time when I have motion sickness. I also take it when I have a cold. My dad, he used to make me really potent ginger tea, like super potent. Literally, if this was a bowl to cook the ginger, 1/2 of it would be full of fresh ginger. He poured water in it and he would make me drink a cup. The cup was probably this big and I would sit there. I couldn't leave the table until I drank it. And if you've ever drank fresh ginger tea, like that's like really spicy stuff, okay? Especially for a little kid. But he would make me drink that and then he would send me to school, right? And whenever I complained of a sore throat, drink your ginger tea and then go to school. And so I had perfect attendance in school from like 1st grade till high school. Like the only reason why I don't have perfect attendance in college, because one particular class just bored me too much. So, but otherwise, I had perfect attendance probably through my whole educational career. I can't remember missing a day of school in medical school or in college, except for the classes that that was boring me. And in high school, in junior high, I take a lot of pride in showing up in life. Okay. So anyway, ginger is really, really useful. Okay. So the next thing I use is cloves. It adds a really nice flavor when you put these ingredients like nutmeg. It's basically like pumpkin spice, right? And so these cloves are so anti-inflammatory. It has the most antioxidants out of all the spices. So if you want to reduce inflammation, ginger is a way to go. Cloves is another way to go. Now, the thing with cloves is it's really pungent. So you don't want to overdo it. So what I do is I take this shaker and I shake it real hard twice, right? And that's how I decide how much cloves are going in. Maybe we just give one more shake because I really like the taste of cloves. Allspice is the same thing. This is ground allspice. It has a similar pungent taste. If you put too much, it may overpower the rest of the cake. So you just want to put enough to give you that spice. So I just barely shake it real hard. Actually, there's more allspice and cloves. Nutmeg, I find it's the same thing as well. It has that very loud aroma, fragrance, as well as taste. And so I'm going to just shake it in. Okay, wow, that's a lot of shake. Okay, that's 2 shakes. I don't think my clove really shook much in, but I got a lot of these other spices, right? And then cinnamon. Okay, now cinnamon you could put a little bit more of. Lots of people like cinnamon. The only cinnamon that I use is Ceylon cinnamon. I only use Ceylon cinnamon because it doesn't have coumarins that are in the fake cinnamon, cassia cinnamon. Most cinnamon on the market are going to be cassia cinnamon. And so I actually look for Ceylon cinnamon. It's a little bit harder to find. But if your cinnamon isn't labeled, it's unlikely to be Ceylon cinnamon. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And I'll put like a teaspoon. Oops, I'll put like a heaping teaspoon. This is like a quarter, so it's probably like half. So I'll put 2 of these, right? Maybe 3. I like cinnamon, so it makes it taste really fragrant. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this all up. I can smell it already. Okay, so and you want to mix it up before you put any wet ingredients in, right? All I'm doing is just mix, 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 evenly distributing all of it, right? To get all the clots or clumps, I should say, not clots, but clumps out. All right, and you may see large oat pieces if you grind your own flour, but oat flour, but it's okay, right? The oats are already pre-cooked. You put the liquid in, it'll soften up. It won't be a problem. I think that's mixed pretty well. What do you guys think? All right, so your dry ingredients, your wet ingredients will go in the dry ingredients, and you're just gonna keep stirring, okay? So the thing with the wet ingredients is we're gonna put the flax seeds in. Remember how I said it's gonna gel? Look at that, right? So this is all thick now, and that's what you want as a binder, okay? But you don't want it clumped, so that's why you're gonna put all the wet ingredients together. Okay, so this is flax seeds, right? That was a tablespoon of flaxseed and 3 tablespoons of water. So now I'm going to put about ½ a cup of any plant-based milk you want to put, right? And I'm just putting in here to get all the flaxseed out. I don't like wasting food. All right. And that gives you a good amount of liquid so that you then blend together the dry ingredients. All right. So this is my handy blender. I love this stuff. Okay. Now it may get stuck on the bottom because of the dates. It's okay. Just lift up your blender, right? As you blend, just lift the stuff up so it's like creates a suction so that you go from the bottom, lift it up, down, up, down. And remember, it's not just the dates that are sweetening this. This is sweetened by the pineapple, and there's we're going to sweeten it by the carrots and the raisins, right? And the kumquat skin. Actually, it's not a kumquat. It was a mandarin quat, a mandarin and kumquat together. All right, I think this is good enough. All you got to do is blend this together. If this is too thick, you'll know, right, in this batter. So it's really at the end, what we're looking for is a batter to be a good texture. This is kind of the texture that your batter should look like. But of course, once we roll in the dry ingredients, it's not going to look like this. So we may need to put more liquid in, depending on how this goes. Okay. So all right. Okay, so now we're going to pour this jug in. and stir at the same time, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour a little bit in at a time like I did, and I'm just going to mix the flour in it, okay? It's going to be stuck in your whisk, just like, you know, gently tap it and it'll come down, right? And of course, this is very little wet ingredient for all this dry ingredient. It will mix together, okay? And shake it in, right? This is a great experiment for kids to participate in because it's really tactile. You don't have to have exact anything, right? And then, so now I'm going to mix. Okay, see what it's doing? It's just mixing as a dough. It's a great workout. All right, I think I need a bigger spoon to get all the stuff out. All right, now that I got all of it in, I'm gonna work it. All right, so this dough is a little bit hard to work with, and notice that it doesn't run. It's not runny, right? So I'm gonna add some milk in. Then this is the problem with not being exact. When you're not exact, you run the risk of overshooting or undershooting your liquid to your dry ingredients, okay? And because I've been baking for a long time, ever since I was a kid, I understand like the chemistry of the dough, so that you begin to be able to eyeball things without having to follow recipe to the T, right? But but if you follow it to the T, it should work. I did try it to the T the first time to make sure that the recipe works. I just get kind of lazy following recipes, okay? So, all right. So this is a batter that I'm kind of looking for, right? It's kind of not too runny. If you have it too runny, you could have it runnier and it'll be softer in texture. You'll need to bake it longer, okay? So, but I usually use this kind of batter, but we can get it softer to see what it tastes like, right? I'm all up for experimenting, especially because the cake is so thin. But the thing is, you're gonna layer it. So I think in the end, I used about a cup to get it like this running, kind of like pancake batter mix. All right, so that's a pancake batter mix texture, right? Right here. A little bit thicker than pancake batter. And this is like the perfect texture for me. All right, so then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold in the dry ingredients. Now, usually you want to use a bigger spoon, but like I said, I don't like to wash stuff. So I'm just going to fold this in as is. And this is the easy part, right? Because your batter is loose enough. You want to warm up your oven to 325 degrees. Now, if this is wetter, I would reduce the temperature and bake it longer, especially if you want to make a thicker cake, okay? I like thin cakes because it bakes faster, but if you want a thicker cake, like a real cake loaf, a loaf pan, this fits about in a bread pan. If you want a round cake, it'll fit a round cake batter too. But if you want it to be thicker, then just turn your degrees down because you want to start cooking in the center as opposed to cooking on the outside. Now, a lot of cake recipes, they start at like 350. I don't like to start at that because I find that with my ingredients, because it's whole food, it doesn't cook inside and it basically burns on the outside. So that's why I like to make everything thin to make sure everything is cooked thoroughly and that I don't have to wait forever. But if you want to make like a cake size loaf, cook it like at 285 degrees. You just need to cook it longer, okay? And so probably I would say it'll need to cook for an hour, if you use like a regular cake loaf as opposed to making it thin. When you make it thin and you spread it along like a cookie, it cooks like in, I would say 30 minutes, like 15 minutes on each side, or even depending on how wet you get it. If it's too wet, so when you stick your fork in it and it comes out wet, then you got to keep it in there. You don't want to, so what I do is I bake it on a tray on a parchment paper. So that's what I'm going to do now is plate it on a parchment paper, and I'll spread it nice and thin so that it bakes faster. If you want to, you know, spread it thicker, then it just takes longer. And when I spread it nice and thin, I bake it on one side and then I take it out after it's solidified. I flip it over and dry up the bottom. And that's how I bake my cookies, my bars, my cakes. That's just what I realize is the fastest way for me to like not spend a whole lot of time in the kitchen. All right. Okay, so I'm going to actually scrape more of this off because you're either going to have to scrape it off or you have to throw it away. If it goes in your sink, it'll plug up your sink. So you really want to throw whatever dough, whenever you're working with, you don't want to throw in the sink if you don't use it, okay? Because it will plug up your sink. It just like settles, right, in your pipes. Not a good thing to do, okay? So any kind of grains, you want to make sure you throw away. Otherwise, it'll ruin your pipes. Okay, I'm just spreading this out. It'll spread better with a knife, so a flat surface, but I don't like to wash more dishes, okay? So that's why I'm using, just doing everything with a tablespoon. Okay, so this is kind of evenly spread, sort of, right? And you can cut this up in bars in the end, right? And because I don't want to like throw any of this batter away because number one, it's like good stuff. Number two, you know, I'm going to have to throw it in the trash can if I don't bake it. So I will take my fingers. Everything we use is actually edible by itself, right? I would never taste raw batter from flour, like from like wheat flour, but oats are already pre-cooked. Even, you know, that's why you can eat overnight oats. They're already pre-cooked. So what I do is I take my finger to get more food, right? Otherwise, all this is going to be trashed. Okay, so let me do this. All right, I'm going to go wash my hands, put this in the oven, and we're going to put frosting on the cake. Be right back. All right, let's make that frosting, okay? Remember, this was a frosting jar. I had cashews and dates. And I'm going to have, actually, I forgot. I'm going to add one more thing to it. Hold on. All right. So I put about I would say 5 dates in here with a half a cup of cashews. Okay. I soaked them overnight. One thing though, I'm going to pour out this cashew water because it's going to make it's basically going to make the frosting too wet. Okay. So let me pour out this water. This is great, like syrup for you to add to other foods, but we're going to take that out because it's already soft, okay? To this, I'm going to add these peels. These are kumquat peels that I actually froze because my friend has a giant kumquat tree that produces giant kumquats, and so I love the skin. It's so fragrant. So I'm going to put probably, that's about like 3 kumquat skins, okay? And I'm going to take a blender and blend this whole thing. And let's see how creamy we can get this emulsion. All right. So the cream is going to be a little bit brown because of the dates, okay? But it does look creamy. Okay, so let's plate the cake so you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to get 2 pieces from the cake that I baked earlier. Like go on top of each other. Let's see. All right. So you can get 2 pieces. You can actually get 3, right? And if they don't fit exactly, it's okay. You can cut it, okay? So this cake doesn't exactly fit, right? You see how it's a little bit rough on the edge here? I'm going to put it on the bottom and just cut off the edge, right? And then it'll fit exactly, okay? That was a corner. Okay, now I'm going to take this here. I'm going to start putting frosting on this, right? It basically plates like frosting, okay? And you can actually put a banana in here, strawberries in here, right? But look, it just is smooth as frosting, right? And literally this is blended cashews. So this is not a low calorie food, folks, because you're blending, you know, you're blending stuff, right? But so you can eat more of it, but it is whole food. So if you're trying to lose weight, don't eat so much cake. So, right? But if you are trying to gain weight, is a great way to gain weight. Some people like a lot of frosting. I personally don't, but I'll put more so you guys can see what it looks like, okay? Ooh, I didn't realize I had water in that bowl. Okay, so that cake didn't do because that has water in it. I put it in a bowl of water. All right, and then that goes on top. All right, look at that. Doesn't that look pretty? And then you can, on top of it, you can even put some, you know, orange rind, or that's like a kumquat peel, right? And it makes it look like gourmet. So I will try it to see what it tastes like. Okay. First, let me clean this up a bit because it looks pretty messy. Let's try it. This is a big reveal. I've actually never made this frosting before, and I've never layered this cake, right? So, bon appetit. Wow. This is like the best carrot cake I've ever made because of the kumquats. That tastes really good. Now, this is one dish that you can eat as breakfast or substitute it for lunch or eat it for dinner as a main dish, really, because it's packed with protein, fiber, phytonutrients, and it's probably going to make you pretty full. Now, keep in mind, if you're trying to lose weight, you don't want to overeat anything, even if it's healthy, especially if it's baked, because it can be dense in calories. Balancing inflammation is a key to our health span and lifespan. And if you want to learn some other superfoods to help you do that, watch the next video.